Afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another podcast of Standing. I am David Steele, not David Caduto, and I'll get into that a little bit later.
Yes,
but
tell us about it.
yeah, so
And I'm Aaron Lanuza.
so basically, we were here today, and so we were trying to figure out what we were going to do for topics. And so it occurred to us that in all of the 3 months that we have been doing this show, that we have not done like a update or a hodgepodge of various topics. So I thought today what we would do is we would do a podcast of various topics.
Yes.
So we are going to cover everything from the King Kong sequel to
The Power Rangers making a new movie.
yes, to their trailer,
Exciting.
their teaser trailer, just putting a new poster out, to Darth Vader being in Rogue One, to a passing of a young actor. So I thought, so let's get started. What would you like to discuss first?
Well, I suppose we could talk about Ben Affleck and his new Batman movie.
Right. So if you haven't been keeping up to date about this, so Ben Affleck, obviously, who played Batman in Batman vs. Superman, which, by the way, made $350 million at the box office. So for all of you critics, bah humbug, because that was one of the biggest movies of the summer. That being said,
Yep.
Zack Snyder and him had been in talks about doing a role in a Batman film. And so what ended up happening was Affleck, of course, who's won 2 Academy Awards, one for Good Will Hunting, the other one for Argo, basically said, okay. So right now what they're trying to do is hammer down a script, and he is going to tell the story of the Caped Crusader once again. Personally, I don't see how you can do it. It's been done so many times. It's overkill.
I mean, what I was saying to you before, I think that this movie is just going along with this trend of, you know what, if we think it'll sell, it'll make a lot of money, and there we go, let's do that.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing here. They're going to make a lot of money. They know that this blockbuster is... I mean, okay, so let's just go back and... I mean, DC Comics, their new movie franchise, they made $330 million or $1 billion dollars or $1 million dollars.
They made $350 million. And the thing is, and you bring up a good point, is because...
They know it's going to sell.
Well, that, and the fact is, I mean, we have the much anticipated Suicide Squad's coming out in about 2 months, and I know you're all over this.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is, too, that if, you know, we've got the Wonder Woman sequel or Wonder Woman movie coming out, all these things,
Yep.
I think this could be fascinating. Now, my one question would be, who's going to play the villain? And the reason I say that is because usually Batman has to have a villain. I have somebody in mind. I think if they might tease, and I don't know if you've seen in the trailer, they kind of tease Batman in Suicide Squad. Could we possibly get a new... Could the Joker be there?
The Joker in this new movie.
Yeah, I think that might be fascinating to see. I mean, it's one of those things. But we'll keep a lookout for that.
I'm hoping that DC kind of does something where they incorporate all their characters, just like they did in Batman vs. Superman, in all of the movies. So where we'll see one character that we had seen in the last movie, we'll see him again.
Absolutely, and I think this is where it's going to take a lot of time for DC to do.
Yeah.
Because what Marvel's done is, as you said, put one movie, one character and so on and so forth. But the problem is, when you have that kind of thing, it takes 6, 7, 8 years to develop that big, monstrous universe.
Well, I mean, if that's what the situation is, I don't understand why they couldn't do it now, having introduced all of their universe. I mean,
you're right.
Portion of their characters in Batman vs. Superman, and not to mention that it all happened in no more than 10 minutes.
Yeah,
they introduced the whole universe and what they plan on doing.
And we've talked about this before, and I've seen the movie twice, and I was struggling to get through it both times. But the fact is, for me personally, it was way too jam-packed. It was, I mean, you could have introduced it, and I understand they wanted to put all the characters in there, but at the same time, it was just way too jam-packed for my liking.
Yeah.
So that being said...
that one scene where, when he was younger, much
yes,
younger...
Yes, the child. We're talking about the very beginning.
Yeah, and when he was flying away, I think it just kind of sums it up.
Yeah.
It was a dream. It was just... what they were planning on doing, what they tried to do, it was just a big dream that they had, and they tried putting that on the big screen, and it flopped, although it did make a lot of money.
Well, I think, and it'll be fascinating to see how Ben Affleck interprets it to Zack Snyder, and because you had two totally different things.
Ah, that's a good point.
So, okay, moving on. We have this, well, as everybody knows, IMAX is one of the biggest money makers as far as movies out there. So whenever you see a trailer or a teaser spot on TV, it's always, see this in IMAX, see this in IMAX, see this in IMAX 3D. And, of course, you're paying an extra $4 or $5. Now, I've done it a few times, and...
It's sometimes worth it. So
and sometimes it is worth it, other times
the
it's
leisure
horrible.
that comes out of it sometimes. Too.
Yeah, and so I personally am not a fan of it. And I can't see spending the money, an extra $5 when you can buy a popcorn, I guess. But, it's like, what is your feelings on it? Do you like IMAX? I guess this is the first thing.
I do like IMAX. I've only seen a documentary, and that was a while back. I mean, you're encompassed, and it looks incredible. I mean, I haven't been to a movie recently, but I'm willing to try it.
Yeah, no, I've done a couple of movies in IMAX. I went to go see not the last Mission Impossible, but Ghost Protocol. I went to go see that in IMAX.
The surround sound.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, is if you want your ears to get blown out.
Womp,
yeah,
womp,
yeah.
womp.
So, I mean, you go to an IMAX theater. If you don't mind paying a few extra bucks, I mean... But that being said, to me, there is no difference between... And it's funny, because I actually went to go see it in a regular theater, too, just because. And I didn't see a difference. I didn't see a difference in quality of film. I didn't see a difference in quality of sound, even though it may have been louder.
So what exactly does the IMAX offer that the regular movie doesn't offer?
I think, personally, I think clarity of the film. I think it's... sound. I think it's all of these different things. And I could be... See, I'm not an audio guy or a visual guy, but that being said, I would think it's more of an audio or visual type of thing. It's crisper. It's almost like HD. I mean, we're getting to the point now where we have 4K, and, I mean, the pixels are just so intense.
Super crisp.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's one of those things that, okay... I mean, and there were sequences, I don't know if it was done in Batman and Superman or some other, I mean, I know some other movies have filmed in IMAX before, and I know one thing's for sure, it's more costly. And so that immediately is going to up price as far as budget and everything else. Yeah. But there are some filmmakers that enjoy doing that, and that's great. But for me personally, so the reason, I'm getting off the track here, but the reason we're saying this is because AMC is going to be putting in, I want to say, how many? 40 or 50 new IMAX screens?
25 additional IMAX screens, actually.
25, I was totally off. 25 different additional IMAX screens, and basically across the country in their theaters.
And they're going to do it by 2019.
So this is going to be relatively quick. So that means you're going to have more selections, which basically, and if you think about it, these are going to get paid back. I mean, they're going to make their money back fairly quickly. Yeah. And I say that because ticket prices, I say that because of the movies that are coming out, And
the luxury of it nowadays.
Well,
I mean,
absolutely.
AMC, at their Burbank location, they have alcohol.
Yeah, which I know the Regal down here actually does too, and that theaters are starting to accompany. They want to make it more of an evening experience, so they'll sell beer and wine and alcohol just to get that older crowd in. But I don't know. It'll be fascinating to see because I think too that NATO, which is the National Organization of Theater Owners, and I'm sure this was
NATO.
Basically approved, and I'll be curious to see how they respond to it. I mean, because once again, it's a franchise, it's corporate and everything else, but at the same time, it's okay, but let's face it, basic bottom line is they're just trying to make a buck. And so, it is what it is.
AMC already is a nice theater.
Yeah.
But for them to put in the IMAX, it's just, I'm sure that people are going to want to see their favorite movie that way.
Yeah.
If they're a big fan of the Marvel movies, there's no way that they're going to pass an opportunity to see it in better quality.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Okay, so we've a couple of things under the belt. So let's talk about let's talk about one of the, I won't say funnier things, but recently we know that there is a new Power Rangers movie that's going to be done in, I want to say 2018 or so. And so basically, what ended up happening was they released their first, wasn't a teaser, but because it's already been cast, it's a poster. And if you haven't seen the poster yet, it's not a bad poster. It's actually a beautiful, I don't know if it's
actually
a lot.
Yeah,
it's
nice.
A lot of color correction done. And
it looks like a poster that you would see in the backdrop of a PacSun.
Yeah, exactly. So basically it's 4 individuals standing on a car, an older hatchback, and one off to the side. Anyways, there's a sunset, and in the sky, there's a lightning bolt. And what it basically represents is that the Power Rangers are coming back. And so, anybody who didn't know from the 80s or the 90s, Power Rangers were they were called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers back in the day. Mm-hmm. And Kimberly Johnson was, I know, one of them. And basically, it was huge back in the 80s. Huge. I mean, this made a lot of money for them. So, it's one of those things where they've made it now a PG-13, or, it's more adult.
Elizabeth Banks from the Hunger Games.
Yes. So, I mean, they're starting to get stars. And this will be a fascinating tale to see how they're able to incorporate everybody. Do you remember anything about the Power Rangers?
I was into the first season of it. I remember getting into it slightly. And all I remember is the witch. She almost looked like she had one of those sorcerer hats on.
Yeah.
And that one itself was one of my favorites, although it then turned into something else. Every season was something new, and they had like a dino.
I remember that.
Yeah, they had a dino version, and I didn't recognize the characters anymore, so I kind of just didn't watch it anymore.
Yeah, I remember one of the seasons had the white Power Ranger. Mm-hmm. It just didn't. The other movie, and there was a movie made later on with actually the same cast of characters.
Yeah.
Completely and totally busted. I mean, just sank like the Titanic, because it was a great kid-friendly television show, but translating that to the big screen just didn't work. And so it just didn't do well. So I'm actually curious to see how this is going to work.
Don't you remember that one preview that came back out just a couple years ago? It was a YouTube video, and
yes,
the YouTube video had about a 10-minute long short movie presentation of the Power Rangers, and it was cliche in some parts, but for the most part, it was actually pretty damn good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If it's done well, and that's the other thing I'm starting to see now as far as movies and television is concerned, is a lot of, and we spoke about this in one of our other podcasts, the reality TV, but not only that, the network television. By the way, if you want to go to our SoundCloud and listen to all of our podcasts, you can go to www.soundcloud.com and search my name, David, D-A-V-I-D, Caduto, C-A-D-U-T-O. Yeah, I have to change that still. But, search my name and you'll be able to see all of Sini's podcasts from the very beginning. And so, But getting back to what I was saying, it basically, like, you see all of these things from 25 and 30 years ago starting to make a reoccurrence. And, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and all of these other movies. And it's like, okay, so they're turning things over again.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be shocked in another 25 or 30 years, let's say maybe 2030, 2035, if we're starting to see the same thing. So that would be fascinating. Now, I know you have got a picture there of Bryan Cranston. And so he is playing, help me with the name here. Zordon. So, yeah, I guess he's supposed to be like one of the mentors for the Rangers.
Oh, you know what? I wasn't sure.
I think he is.
Okay.
So,
but that's exciting because he's
a great actor.
He has been in some really good movies recently.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, if you want to catch him in a great movie coming out this July, it's called The Infiltrator.
Yeah.
And it's all about, he's an FBI agent, and basically he infiltrates one of the biggest cartels in Mexico, and he basically takes down this cartel from the inside out. And as a matter of fact, I was just watching him the other night, and so he basically, like I said, he takes this from the inside out, and the day before he's supposed to get married to his undercover FBI agent, who was female at the time, they arrest 35 cartel members, and they nail every single one of them on a multitude of charges. It's a fascinating story. But, so that's going to be...
watch it to be able to find it.
Exactly. So,
I mean,
you've seen a lot of, like, things like Traffic or whatever else. No, this is real life as far as that. But nonetheless, so Bryan Cranston's going to be in, of course, everybody knows him from Breaking Bad. Mm-hmm. So, Trumbo, which he just got nominated for an Academy Award this last year. So he's a fantastic actor, so that ought to be a fun role for him, I think.
Yeah.
Speaking of sequels and whatnot, we have a new King Kong that's going to be coming out in a couple years. And that's just, Skull Island is the subtitle. And I just went, wow, really? But, I mean, personally, I never saw the other one with Jack Black.
That was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good.
So,
although some people say that performance was, it wasn't the greatest movie.
Yeah.
And it was due in part to Jack Black.
Yeah.
But I don't agree with that. I think he actually did a pretty good job, and he played it serious enough to where you can believe his character.
Yeah.
Throughout the movie, though, it was really good. What this movie is talking about in particular is that they're going to bring this character, this King Kong, from when it started, about a 30-foot tall King Kong, and they're going to now have this one be 100-foot tall.
Yeah, which, I mean, it kind of... I don't know if the King Kong was a prequel to this or what, or this is. I'm very. I think skeptical is the word.
I think you're on the right track there.
I'm very. I will say one thing. There are a few movies out there, but this actually does have a halfway decent cast that's signed on.
You're right.
John Goodman is in this.
Samuel L. Jackson
is in this. Brie Larson, who just won the Academy Award for Room, John C. Reilly.
John Goodman.
So it's going to be one of those things where we'll see. I mean, I'm...
I mean, it's not going to be a very...
you're going there for the effects, ladies and gentlemen.
It's going to be a very expensive movie, that's for sure.
Yeah, you're going there for the effects. You're not going there for the acting.
if it's one movie that Universal has really put in a lot of money, I mean... They have a whole theme. They have a theme ride for this type of movie. It sells. People really care about this movie.
This has been at Universal. I'm going to say the better part of 30 years, 35 years.
They do care about this franchise.
It's one of those things where, that's one of the staples there. As a matter of fact. Yeah. So
they are saying on this website here that it will be out in March of 2017.
Oh, okay. So they do have a release date. Oh, so that ought to be interesting because, we've got. We've got Justice League coming out in 2017. We've got this. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of interesting movies.
Power Rangers is actually supposed to come out that same year.
Yeah, Power Rangers. And we've got Episode 8 coming out. So next year, we might actually have a halfway decent year. So stay tuned for that. Um, one of the big stories, and anybody and I was just talking about Rogue One. If you don't know who the big black guy is in the suit with a red lightsaber, you've been living under a rock for 40 years. His name's Darth Vader, and he's going to be in, and it's just confirmed he was just going to be in Rogue One. This is huge, because anybody who knows the story of Star Wars, like anybody, knows that from Episode 3 to Episode 4, we see him. Well, we see him.
I mean,
we see the genesis of him. Yeah, exactly. But the thing is,
Rogue One, that, though.
Right.
His transition.
Right. Rogue One is this. Well, let's just backtrack for a little bit. It's a film coming out in December, a week before Christmas, I want to say, and this movie, they dropped a trailer like 2 months ago, and it's gotten huge hits all over the internet. But nonetheless, this is actually, speaking of a big cast, this has got a big cast in itself. And it's got Forrest Whitaker, and it's got Felicity Jones, and so it's got a big cast. That being said, everybody was speculating, is Darth Vader going to be in it? Is Darth Vader going to be in it? Well, now we have it. So instead of, and they've done a little tweaking with the things. Instead of, they're not called AT-ATs. I forgot what they're called off the top of my head. And there's
AT-ACTs?
Thank you. And they're not called TIE Fighters. They're called what, Aaron?
TIE Strikers.
Thank you, TIE Strikers. So a little difference, but nonetheless. But yeah, so Rogue One essentially is about these pilots who go into the Death Star and steal the plans. And so the start of Episode 4 is when we see Vader burst on the scene, and Vader bursts on the scene and basically says, "Where are the plans? Where are the plans?" and kidnaps Leia. So, but what plans are we talking about? Well, the plans in Rogue One. So this is going to be fun. I think
this movie is also supposed to show us the demise of the Death Star. So
well, it's not the demise. Yes, you are correct. As far as when Luke blows it up in the end of Episode 4. But that will be, I think, for the average viewer, this is going to be fun because I know personally I've sat down and watched all 6. I'm dying to see the in-between. So what I probably will do is watch 1, 2, 3, Rogue One, 4, 5, and 6, and then 7. Because
here we were in a universe where we only thought that the biggest thing out there that can annihilate a planet was the Death Star. But then they came out with this new movie that happened in 2016. So then we see that there's something bigger.
But see, in all honesty, okay, so what he's talking about is The Force Awakens. And The Force Awakens takes place 30 years after Darth Vader's death. So we see him, get, his body's laid to rest in the funeral pile at the end of Jedi. And so this happens 30 years after his death.
Yes, and the reason why I say that, for us as Star Wars fans, all we know is that the Death Star is here. It's the biggest thing that can be a weapon of destruction.
Right.
But all of a sudden, now we have this Rogue One movie where we find out that the plans were there ever since.
Oh yeah. Well,
the beginning.
It basically, I think what Lucasfilms and everybody there is trying to do is they're trying to put the pieces together.
Yeah.
So you have a gap in between 3 and 4, and you go, wait, what happened? Here's your middle ground. Here's your gap.
But this is a big puzzle piece.
No, absolutely. The other thing too is, and what you're going to see now, and they've already greenlit this, and they've already cast this, is you're going to see individual movies come out. So now that you've seen this, okay, you're now going to get a Han Solo movie, a solo Han Solo movie.
A solo Han Solo, okay.
Yeah, I know that sounded great, didn't it?
Try to say that
no, you're gonna get a movie, an origin movie about Han Solo.
Do we know? We don't know yet who is actually going to be the
character. I don't know if they casted that or not. We'll get back to you about that.
Yeah, they've been talking about it for a while.
I know for a fact they're doing one about Boba Fett, which is one of the most beloved characters.
Everyone loves him.
Out there. So they're doing one because if you remember in episode 2, Attack of the Clones, they talked about, Boba Fett and Jango, okay? But you never really found out where he was from. So we're going to be going all the way back and seeing how he became that bounty hunter that eventually hunted down Han Solo. And don't be shocked, and I'm going to break it to you first, don't be shocked if you're going to have Boba Fett in Han Solo's movie. Because I wouldn't be shocked if there was a twist somewhere where they said, okay, well, this guy did me wrong somehow, or I know him a lot better than everybody else, or something, and that's why he was able to catch Solo. So don't be shocked if they turn around and say, oh, well, he's going to be... Well, I'm breaking it to you first. I think that's how they're going to do it with the story because it only makes sense. You can't have somebody that catches somebody and say, well, they didn't cross paths before. It just doesn't work.
True.
So don't be shocked about that.
That's a good point.
So that being said, we're going to have Darth Vader in Rogue One. I'm dying to see Rogue One. I think that this is going to be, look at what happened with Force Awakens. Everybody was clamoring at that.
I'm just so sad that I'm not going to see Daisy Ridley again.
Well, we won't see her until Episode 8.
Yeah, but I just wish that it was coming out this year.
Yeah, no, well, and that's the thing, though. Well, that's the thing. They want to make you have anticipation. Yeah. And it's go, and then you forget about her. Now, the other thing, too, is, and this is something to keep in mind, when we're talking about the pilots of Rogue One, don't forget a lot of them die. So don't get too attached to these characters and say, because they will probably die. I wouldn't be shocked, breaking to you first, spoiler alert possibly, if Felicity Jones' character died. Because they have to get the plans to the Alliance somehow, and if we know she goes in, but does she come back out?
I think, I have a feeling that they're going to leave that as a mystery.
Absolutely.
They're going to leave that as a mystery.
Absolutely. So, anyways, we digress. So, but in the last couple of weeks, Finding Nemo look, it was obviously, this is why blockbuster season is blockbuster season, because we have movies that just everybody wants to see.
And we've been waiting for this movie for a long time.
Almost 15 years.
Yeah, it came out about 15 years ago.
And so this made $136 million in its opening weekend. And, it was so... And I think the other main factor, too, is, number one, you've got a great animation company in Pixar. Number two, you have a lot of the cast coming back, especially Ellen DeGeneres. Mm-hmm. She could have turned it down. But I think when she saw the script, she said, absolutely, I've been dying to see this. And so a good friend, George Pinocchio, talked to Ellen about that. And if you actually want to go take a look at that podcast or hear that podcast, that was actually a couple weeks ago.
Just 2 weeks ago?
Yep, so you can go check that out on the SoundCloud as well. By the way, we do post all of our podcasts on C&E for COC. That is on Facebook. So it's going to be www.facebook.com/C, capital C-N-E, number 4, capital C-O-C. All of the podcasts are there, and you can listen to the Pinocchio one there. And he actually speaks to her about that, and it's pretty fascinating. But, in all honesty, there was some overtones. And from what I've heard, there was some overtones about whether it was... I want to say homosexual, but yeah, it was a strange kind of thing. Nonetheless, though, I mean, $136 million a couple weekends ago, and it's going to continue to do well. And so, I've not seen it personally.
Can you tell us about those undertones?
Yeah. So basically, I don't know too much about them, so I want to delve, and I don't want to be wrong about them. So basically.
What did you hear?
What I think happened, and don't quote me on this, I want to say that there was some. See, I'll be honest with you. I don't really know too much about. I know I briefly read something and I glanced at it, and so.
What is the what is the rumor that you heard?
Well, that there was, because of the Ellen DeGeneres, and anybody who doesn't know, she's a lesbian, which is which is fine and whatever else. But they try to equate her sexuality to the movie.
Oh, I see.
And so
that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, and I don't think anything was really made of that. So
yeah,
but nonetheless, speaking of stars, I know that this last week, and we didn't say anything about it, but this last week we lost a star.
Anton Yelchin.
Yes, he was 27 years old. I want to say.
Yeah, he was.
He was 27 years old. His car ran into his mailbox, which is kind of a freak accident, but he ended up dying. And so there was no foul play. There was no investigative thing to find foul play. There was an outpouring of gratitude and love for this man on Twitter and social media. Fact is, he was a good star, and I think everybody remembers him as him in Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's actually in Star Trek Beyond, which comes out July 7th, I believe.
He was also in the last Star Trek as well.
Yes, he was in all of the Star Treks, and it's just a tragedy, because it's one of those things where this guy had his whole life ahead of him. He was a good actor.
27 years old.
Yeah.
For some of our younger viewers, 27 is still very young.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's a shame to see, but and so basically what they were saying is, what the investigators said was, his car was going to be recalled, and I want to say for some reason or another, and I want to say it was brakes. Don't quote me on that. And so they eventually, before that happened, before anything could be done about it, and so it's one of those things where we lose somebody again. It seems like this is all the time.
So
if you have any,
I'm sorry.
No, correct. Go for it.
But I just found that the Guardian reported that Yelchin's car rolled down the driveway, and he was pinned across against a security fence.
Wow.
So it is likely that he had died from the injuries within a minute.
Okay, well, at least it was a quick death.
Yeah.
So, not that any death is a good death. I'm not saying that, but at least it was
go through a painful death.
Exactly. But the fact is that how this could happen is just, I guess, mind-boggling, because it's not that it should.
It's just hard. It's hard because I think recently we've gone through several different people who.
Well, yeah. Absolutely.
On top of the incident that happened last week.
Oh, when we have.
We're just going through a lot of death.
Yeah, really, and that's the only way of putting it. Whether you're famous or not, it's one of those things where it's.
It's not easy to put up.
It's so
That's
he will be missed.
Yes.
He will be missed, and that's so. But at least he was adored by not only his friends, family, but fans, but others in Hollywood and others celebrities. And it wasn't like this guy was a no name and he just didn't have anybody. Do you know what I mean?
No, yeah, he was putting himself out there.
So,
27 years old. That's still very early in his career.
So, condolences to his friends, family, and
workmates.
So yeah, absolutely. So, I know that you've been itching. So we're going to transition right now, because I know Aaron has been itching to talk about this new app that he saw. So I'll let you have the floor, my friend.
Yes. So for anyone who is out there who really have trouble kind of understanding and grasping the concepts that come from listening to the news, watching the news, getting the full story from the news, there is an application. I'm not coming from them. We're not getting any sponsorship from them, this company. But it's the Daily Skim, this application that you can download on your phone, whether you have an Android or you have an Apple phone. You can put this on your phone and sign up for their subscription. Basically, what it is daily stories that they send you to your email, and they're just very simple, straight to the point. In our layman's terms, we tend to speak in street talk. So, and this is street talk to its essence, and it tells you exactly what's going on in a very layman's term way. Let me just bring it up here because
I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have the app yourself?
I do, and it's really easy to use.
Okay.
What I think about the application is that it's just an easier way to pull up the stories. What you can do basically is go to the website, just input your email address, and they'll start sending you all these stories.
And by the way, something that Aaron, he said something about a subscription. The first month is free.
No, technically, the whole thing is free.
Oh, whole thing is free.
Yeah, I was telling you about it a couple days ago.
Okay.
And what I was telling you was about the application.
Oh.
Don't be misled, because when you go to that application in the App Store, it will say that you can pay for the...
That's what I was misled, see?
For the monthly subscription. Though, that is really for their other service, which is to give you monthly, up-to-date calendar dates. So that's something else they do. Technically, you don't have to buy that. They do have the Daily Skim that is within that application, though, and it's their third link on the bottom of the screen.
Okay.
It's just so popular right now that you see it in Bloomberg, you see it in Glamour, CNN, you'll see it in U.S. in Forbes. It's getting a lot of recognition, and so many people want to get involved. They have over 20 million people who are part of their following, and they also have a lot of people who want to get involved with the program itself. So you'll see that attached to every email is a list of all of the news reporters who are putting these stories together, and they have them all over the U.S., and it's really great. I mean, the two people who started the company were two reporters for NBC. They had done breaking news, political news, and documentaries. These people were part of the system of news that we're used to, although thought that they should break away. And they were roommates at one point. They saw that they wanted a little bit of change, and so they took this big leap. And what do you know? It's stuck. But I'm beginning to think that this is going to be the future. It's the way to tell the stories now, in a way that everyone understands.
Yeah, I think especially with today's digital technology, everybody has a smartphone, whether it's an Android or an iPhone. I think everybody gets their news from some sort of source, whether it's, I mean, personally, I know I do it from the USA Today, but, you know, whether it's USA Today, whether it's U.S. News and World Reports, whether it's CNN, whether it's Fox, whatever it is, and this is just...
The New York Times.
The New York Times. I mean, the list is endless. Case in point, though, this is just something where it's on your phone, and it's just at the tap of a button where you can do it.
And it will give you your news stories within a small paragraph. It'll make it so that they give you the blunt of the story, and it will break it down for you so that you understand what is going on, and nothing is left out unless you want to research more.
So for all of you writers out there, now I'm going to get a little technical. So if there's ever something that basically you write news, okay, and this could be done for any story, really. There's something called the inverted pyramid.
Correct.
And so basically within that inverted pyramid, okay, you have the 5 questions: who, what, when, why, and how. Sometimes
and when.
And when. So 5, sometimes 6. And so as you write, especially news articles, you are doing all of the, maybe it takes 2 paragraphs depending on the length of them. You are answering all of those questions within the first paragraph or two.
That's a great point, David.
And so what ends up happening is all of the other material that you read, the quotes, the facts, the figures, the statistics, they're in there too, but they're at a later time. Because you may see a statistic that says in 1941 people were going to die at 63, okay? But at the paragraph in the very beginning, you'll have something that will state, hey, look, and
this is what's happening right now.
What's happening right now. So basically what the skim is doing is they're giving you all those 5 or sometimes 6 questions in a paragraph or 2. So
yes.
You don't have to wait and deal with all the stats and facts and figures and graphs and everything, and all the way down, and read all the way down, and quotes, and read all the way down, and say, okay, because half the time, people don't have, let's face it, people don't have the time. They just want to get their news and go.
Exactly.
And so, for this, you're getting everything you need.
Mm-hmm.
It's within a compact, recyclable little portion, and boom, the story's done. And I think that's what, I think that's what people want.
And that's a great point. I mean, David brought up a good point that most stories that you read are going to be in this inverted pyramid style. If you don't have enough time, this is the perfect app for you. And aside from that, if you want to read the news, but you don't have enough time, just remember what David said, that it usually is in this style. And when you get in very important news, all you really need to read is the first sentence or 2. And you should be able to get the crux of the story.
Well, it's not only that. I mean, and you take it, and this can be done for essentially any story ever written. I mean, we're talking from the tragedy that just happened in Orlando,
exactly.
Okay,
That's a perfect
to
example.
A baseball game that happened last night, okay, with, let's say, the Mets and the Dodgers, and Clayton Kershaw was on the mound, blah, 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 and you don't need all of the stats. All you need is the final score, when it took place, where it took place, how long the game was, and, certain other things. When did it start? So that's all you need.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted to say, oh, well, this person, and, then it goes into much more in depth. So I think that's actually a really cool app.
Yeah,
for people that don't like the news, per se.
I think the funny thing is I actually heard about it from a fellow reporter student. And he was telling our whole class about it because what had happened for him was that it was so new at first that they were actually looking for interns to be skim ambassadors. So what that is basically as an intern for that company, you would basically writing for them.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're out of time today, but I have been, I talked about changes last week. So what we're going to do is, as you could tell, first of all, the biggest change was my name. So the story behind that briefly was...
Yes, tell us about it.
Basically, I thought I just needed a new name, and so this was going to be my name. Am I going to change it legally? We'll see.
It does sound pretty nice.
It does sound pretty nice, though. That being said, so we're going to start making some changes to not only the website, but we're going to start, mixing things up.
Mm.
On a later note, I've got an interview I'm trying to put together, and that I think would be a fascinating interview. And probably not entertainment, but definitely something worth talking about, especially after what's gone on in the last month. Okay, so the other thing too, I think next week what we might do, if you want to do this, we're going to do films. We were talking about films in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we'll do is talk about, I know it's only July, or June, or July, but it's not too early to talk about films in 2017.
All right.
And so I think that's what we'll do. And
I look forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, everybody, thank you for tuning in.
You guys are awesome. Thanks for listening.
I'm David Steele.
I'm Aaron Lanuza.
And you've been listening to CNE.